I'm still processing last night, and I imagine it will take a few more days to really absorb the emotions and the feelings of what happened last night. And last night I had a chance to begin by thanking all of my team who are so incredible, and especially Nancy Levy, who put this whole weekend together. I know that there were a million other people who took part in this and that needed to be thanked, and they won't be because there's just not enough time, but please know that I appreciate everything that everyone has done. I'm very fortunate to work with Rabbi Aklepi and Rabbi Greengrass that I have for so long, to Cantor Flaxman, who brings his soul into everything that he does. And I also want to say a special moment now about one other person who you often see on our bima, cantorial soloist Jessica Bass, who you'll hear from quite a bit in just a little, well, I'm going to speak for a long time, so not for a while. Jessica has been our cantorial soloist for over 5 years, and she's now a student in cantorial school. And when I was in rabbinic school, and I was sent out to my very first pulpit as a second-year student to Temple Israel of Grand Forks, North Dakota, they would call me Rabbi. I said, I'm just a second-year student. I feel a little strange when you call me Rabbi. And they said, well, we don't need a student, we need a rabbi, so we're calling you Rabbi. And it was strange. But Jessica has become to us a cantor, and I think that cantorial soloist is an annoying thing to say, and I don't think that she's a cantor because she hasn't been ordained yet, but I don't think there's anything wrong with once in a while calling her cantor and letting her know how proud of her that we are and how thankful we are for what she does. I saw a TikTok recently. It wasn't one of mine, although I'm still sort of flabbergasted that there are more members of the congregation than I have followers. And I don't understand, but there's a way that I can see who it is. But I was watching one of them, and there were some yeshiva boys. You probably have the same algorithm as I do. You get a lot of yeshiva conversation when you're flipping through your phone. And it was a yeshiva in Jerusalem where the boys were interviewing each other, and they were asking each other, who's your favorite hero from the Tanakh? And they would go through and say, they went to one kid and then the other, and they would say, Moses or Abraham or Isaac or Jacob or King David or King Solomon. But at the end of the reel, there were a couple who said Joseph, which I thought was a little strange, because if you had to choose from all of them, usually you'd go for the strongest, the most famous, Moses or Abraham. And I wondered for myself, who would I choose? If you asked me which hero of the Tanakh I most identified with, and I started thinking a little bit more about Joseph, especially because for the last 3 weeks up until now, as we're beginning Shemot and starting the book of Exodus, the last really 4 weeks actually, we've been reading stories about Joseph, and there are more stories about Joseph practically than any of the other forefathers or foremothers in the book of Genesis. When Joseph became second in command of all of Egypt, and he finally revealed to his brothers who had sold him into slavery who he was, and that now they were subservient to him. And when he had finally told Pharaoh that his brothers had returned, and that Jacob, his father, was alive, and that all of them had come down to Egypt because of the famine in Canaan, which we now know as the land of Israel. Joseph said, "You, my family, are going to live in a special place called Goshen." Goshen was a settlement that was far removed from traditional Egyptian society. It was separate. It was located in the eastern Nile Delta, close to Egypt's border with Sinai and Israel. Joseph wanted that his brothers and all of their family and their descendants should establish within Egypt their own community. He wanted them, just as his father had prophesied for them, to build their own Jewish infrastructure in Goshen, with its own study halls, places of learning, and gathering spaces. When Joseph brought his brothers to Pharaoh, he told them to tell Pharaoh, "When Pharaoh asks you what you do for a living, tell them that you're sheep herders, because that's a detestable occupation amongst the Egyptians." The Egyptians weren't impressed with sheep herders, and nobody would envy them. And the rabbis asked the question, why not try to impress Pharaoh? Why not mention that the brothers come from a very famous and notable family? That they descend from Abraham, who was known all over the ancient Near East as a very powerful power broker. And the answer is, because Joseph wanted Pharaoh to see that there was no use for his family, for Joseph's family, for the Jews in Egyptian society, and that they should be given a far-off land where their sheep could roam. And by the way, shepherd, in biblical terms, is code for someone who spends most of his time or her time studying Torah. If you've been in my Torah study class, which means about 50 of you, which is a lot. I don't know where the other 7,900 are, but it's a start. We'll get to that. You know that being a farmer was much harder work. When you farm, you have to constantly be working, constantly be dealing with the land. But when you're a shepherd, it's easier. You have more free time. You say to the sheep, "You're here. Stay here. I'm going to go in the tent and study." You come out a few hours later and you say to the sheep, "Okay, now go there. And I'm going to go in the tent and study." Joseph wanted a place for the Jews in Goshen where the sheep could roam. In other words, he wanted to build for his family a city in his image. At the same time, he wanted them to be as close to the border of Israel as possible. That's why Goshen, on the eastern Nile Delta, so that the Jews could see across the Red Sea where they were from and where they truly belonged. And before his death, he made them promise to dig up his coffin, to reinter him, and someday bury him in Israel, which they did. All of his final prophecies in the book of Genesis, as well as the final prophecies of Jacob, refer to the future of the Jewish people, not in Egypt, but in Israel. But why build all of this Jewish infrastructure in Egypt if the main plan is not to be in Egypt, but to get back to Israel where they belonged? Because as prophets, Jacob and then Joseph foresaw that the people were about to be enslaved for another 210 years in Egypt. And if they were to survive the centuries, that they would be stuck in Egypt as Jews, then they needed the proper infrastructure to maintain them. When I started thinking about this, I realized that Joseph is in many ways the hero of the Torah with whom I most identify. My heart, too, is always in Israel. My soul, too, is always in Israel. My mind's there a lot as well. As Joseph placed the Jews on the border of Canaan, it's really the same reason, the main reason, why I moved from Fort Myers to Miami to be closer to the land of Israel. I identify with Joseph's understanding that survival in the diaspora requires strong Jewish infrastructure. It doesn't come for free like it does when you live in a Jewish society. This weekend isn't really just a celebration of me. I mean, it is. And that's appropriate. It's good. It's really a celebration of a powerhouse of a community. That we have established together an amazing synagogue, the finest Jewish day school anywhere, the most innovative religious school that there is, and now a cutting-edge performing arts center that will be the envy of every Jewish community in this country. In my opinion, we're on the right track and doing so many things right to construct our infrastructure where others along the American Jewish landscape are lagging far behind. But Jewish communities have different priorities. Jews have different priorities. Did you know that in the Greater Miami Jewish Federation survey of 2024, the most recent survey, that 77% of non-Orthodox Jews in Miami said that Israel and Jewish peoplehood were their number one priority as Jews? Israel and Jewish peoplehood were the number one priority for 77% of non-Orthodox Jewish residents in Miami-Dade County. A few years ago, the president of the Jewish National Fund told me that there's not one organization or community in the world, one Jewish organization or Jewish community in the world that is growing that is not Zionist. That is why our focus on Jewish pride, peoplehood, and connection to Israel is so important. The Jewish organizations that lack this moral clarity or do not know how to express it or can't figure out how to be inspired by it, they're flailing, and they'll be lucky to survive. One of the centers that I visited around the country when we were considering what the hub should be, one of them that I visited, when meeting with the executive director, told me, now this was a building in New York City that had a synagogue and an indoor pool. And he told me that his job, you know what people do in synagogues? I'm about to use a Yiddish word. I want to prepare you for it because I don't want you to miss this. You know what it means to daven? Okay. All right. Thank you. Daven means to pray. So he said, my job is to get the daveners to swim a little more and the swimmers to daven a little more. That's my job too. I'm not just your rabbi. I'm also your cruise director. And like cruise ships, continue to add more and more fun ways, or more and more ways to have fun on a ship. we need to keep adding more and more ways to express our Judaism, to bind our community and strengthen Temple Beth Am on our campus. I don't want to tell you all that I'm envisioning tonight and everything that I want to do, but I can tell you that my vision includes more ways to experience spirituality together. You know, over the last 3 years, well, say, the last maybe 6 years, 7 years, I've really asked you for 3 things. I asked you to come one Friday night a month. And I don't know if you ever saw the Larry David episode, where after 3 weeks in January, someone said to him, Happy New Year. 3 weeks into January, and he said, really? The statute of limitations on Happy New Year ends after like January 4th, not January 20th. Enough with the Happy New Year? And he said, it's a little bit how I felt when I asked you to come one Friday night a month. Some of you did. I asked you to come to Beth Am University. Some of you did. And it's building and growing and starts real soon, so I hope you're ready to sign up. But I asked you to come on Friday nights, and it was a sort of a lukewarm response. I asked you to come to Temple Beth Am, and it was okay. I asked you for $57 million, and you said, sure, no problem, here you go. I'm not giving up on the spirituality, and I'm going to come back with more ways on Friday night to get you here, and you're not going to believe what's coming. You have to stick with me, and you're going to start coming on Friday night, not because I beg you, but because you want to, because it's going to be so cool, and you're going to see what's going to happen, and you're going to do the same thing with Beth Am University, because you're not going to believe how amazing it is going to be. I can promise you this is my vision, and it will come true. My vision includes new ways of putting Beth Am on the global Zionist map and offering every one of our members ways to help Israel, ways to really help Israel, that have never been considered by any temple anywhere. I see in our future more ways to socialize and spend time together, more areas on campus where this will be possible. With Beyond the Curve, we took a giant leap. We took what we had and ensured that it would continue to be world-class for the next generation. Now I'm talking about adding to Beth Am things that we've never had, what no one has ever had. I'm talking about the type of vision Joseph saw when he realized his descendants would be living in the diaspora for a long time to come. Today, too, I stand here and wonder, what will I do to make sure that the Jews of the next generation and the generation after that have everything they need to thrive as Jews in this place? And I'm looking at each of you to dream this with me, to yearn for this vision for our future, and to help me make it happen. Don't be fooled. Our future as Jews is guaranteed because we are an eternal nation. But though we are eternal, we've been eternal forever, nevertheless, we've suffered periods of complete darkness, isolation, even slaughter and destruction. But there is no question that the same choice stands before us that it did before Joseph. Will we? And can we see and do and build the infrastructure that their future generations will need to continue to be proud Jews in this place? I want to thank the mayor of Miami-Dade County for being here last night, and I want to thank the mayor and the representatives of Pinecrest, Shannon and Jerry and Mayor Joe for being here tonight, because without their help, we wouldn't be free to live and do what we do here, but since we are, we will take advantage. We will continue to grow and build and do what Jews should do in their holy places. I forget what verse it is, but a wise man once said, "You can't start a fire without a spark." My rabbinate is meant to offer you a spark. But then it's up to you to build the fire. As I said last night, Temple Beth Am is a place where this magic happens in every generation. And that is why I repeat what I said last night. I cannot believe that this is my temple. Let us continue to grow from strength to strength. Amen.